There is a truth very few people dare to admit. Sometimes, what keeps us trapped in a toxic relationship is not love, but a wound. Have you ever loved someone like that? Someone who hurts you, then pulls you back in. Someone who makes you feel incredibly special in the morning, only to make you feel invisible by night. Your reason screams at you to leave, yet something deeper than reason quietly holds you back. And in desperation, you ask yourself, why can't I let go? Carl Jung probably would not call that simply love. He would see it as a meeting between two shadows. In many toxic relationships, what binds two people together is not necessarily love, but a very subtle form of psychological dependency. One person longs to be supported. The other believes they were born to heal others. When someone with narcissistic traits meets someone with an empathic heart, the connection can ignite from the very beginning. But some flames do not warm us. They burn us down. Empaths often believe they can see the real person behind the outer shell. But sometimes, what they see is not truly that person, but their own wound reflected on another face. They do not only love a person, they love the feeling that if they can save the other person, they may also save some part of themselves. And what about the person with narcissistic traits? Beneath that confident, cold, and controlling exterior often lies a very deep fear. The fear of being seen through, the fear of being exposed, the fear that someone might touch the vulnerable part they have buried for far too long. They need the empath because that presence makes them feel less empty. But they also fear that same person because those eyes can see into places they do not want to face. And this is where the paradox begins. The more they are understood, the more they want to run away. The more they are avoided, the harder the empath tries to stay. Closeness, distance, return, hurt. Then it begins again. A cycle that seems to have no way out, where both people are pulled by the unhealed parts within themselves. According to Jung, human beings are not only attracted to what makes them happy. Sometimes, we are drawn toward what feels familiar, what feels complete, or what seems to offer us a chance to repair an old wound, even when that sense of wholeness is woven from pain. Two wounded souls do not always find each other in order to love. Sometimes, they come together to reenact an old story, with the silent hope that this time, the ending will be different. But it will not be different until we understand what is truly happening inside ourselves. In this video, we will step into Carl Jung's depth psychology to touch the questions you may have never dared to ask. Why do we love people who hurt us? What shadow within us is being reflected through them? And most importantly, how do we break free? Not only by leaving the other person, but by finally daring to face ourselves. Because in the spirit of Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you will call it fate. Part 1. Empaths touch the most hidden human. Part of the narcissist. Many people with narcissistic traits live with a portrait they have painted of themselves, carefully, beautifully, and without a single crack. In that portrait, they are strong, they are special, they are admirable. They stand one step above others, and they absolutely cannot be wounded. Carl Jung called this portrait the persona, the mask a person wears so the world can see the version they want to present, not the true person within. But for the narcissist, this mask is not just makeup, it is armor. Because behind that shining armor are dark places they do not dare to look into. The fear of being ordinary, wounds that have never healed, and a question that has burned quietly throughout their entire life. If others saw who I truly am, would anyone still stay? Most people stop at the surface. They believe the portrait, they admire the mask. But empaths are different. Empaths do not only see with their eyes, they sense with something much deeper. They notice the fragile gap between what a person says and what that person truly feels. They hear the trembling sadness behind a proud voice. They see the insecurity hiding inside the need for control. They touch the extreme loneliness behind a coldness that seems impossible to penetrate. And that is the moment everything begins to change. For the first time in their life, the narcissist is faced with a gaze that is not easily deceived. Someone who does not merely admire the mask, but seems to look directly at the person standing behind it. That experience tears them in two from within. One half of them melts with relief. Finally, someone understands them without requiring them to explain, to force themselves to appear strong, or to keep performing. Someone still stays, even after seeing the ugliest parts of them. That feeling is so sweet it almost becomes addictive, because all their life they have longed to be seen in this way, yet they never dared to admit it. But the other half panics, because the empath has just done the most dangerous thing. They have seen. They have stepped beyond the armor the narcissist spent years building, and once someone has seen through them, they can no longer pretend that the mask remains as flawless as before. This is the paradox at the center of this relationship. The empath does not become important because they are perfect, nor do they become unforgettable merely because of their gentleness, patience, or ability to listen, although they possess all of those things. They become an obsession because they make the narcissist realize a terrifying truth. The outer shell is no longer strong enough to protect them. That gaze touches the very wound they have been avoiding their entire life. It reaches the most fragile psychological place, where two opposing desires exist and cannot be reconciled. The desperate desire to be seen, and the deep terror of being seen. For many people, being understood is a gift, but for the narcissist, being understood feels both like being saved and like being threatened. And that is why they find it so difficult to leave, no matter how painful the relationship may become. Because the empath does not only hold their heart, they hold something deeper, the only mirror that has ever dared to reflect the true self they have always tried to hide. Letting that person go is not only losing a love, it is turning away from the truest version of themselves, the rare version that was once seen, touched, and, for a moment, allowed to exist. And very few narcissists have the courage to face that. Part 2. They crave understanding, but cannot bear genuine intimacy. People with narcissistic traits are often very good at enjoying attention. They live off the spotlight, being admired, praised, and surrounded by eyes that look up to them. But when they enter a relationship with someone who has an empathic heart, they receive something completely different, something they may have never truly tasted before. They are not only given attention, they are listened to. They are not only praised, they are truly felt by someone. They are not only looked at like a beautiful painting, they are seen through as a wounded human being. And that is what makes the connection so intense. For the first time, they find a place of peace, even if only temporarily. Beside the empath, they can lower the mask. They do not have to perform as much. They do not have to control as much. They do not have to constantly prove their worth to the world. In a rare moment, they touch the very thing they have longed for all their life, to be accepted as their true self. But hidden behind that sweet moment is a truth they are never ready to face. True intimacy always comes with a price. And that price is called honesty. To remain in a deep relationship, a person must dare to enter the most frightening territory. They must dare to take responsibility, dare to expose their true emotions, dare to admit the wounds they have caused, and above all, dare to look directly at the darkness within themselves. In the spirit of Carl Jung, a person does not become whole by merely imagining light, but by daring to illuminate even the darkest parts of the soul. That is the doorway the narcissist often does not dare to walk through, because they crave healing, but they are terrified of the healing process itself. They desire closeness, but fear that closeness will take away their control. They want to be understood, but they do not want that understanding to force them to change. And so a strange dance begins, a pendulum that never stops swinging. The more they are loved, the more suffocated they feel. The more they are left behind, the more they long for the person they pushed away. When emptiness rises within them, they move toward the empath as if returning to warmth. When they feel too clearly seen, they quietly shrink back and withdraw. When they need a stable place to lean on, they return. And the moment that stable place begins to ask for responsibility, they disappear again, moving closer, pulling away, returning, avoiding. And so the cycle continues, as if it has no end. This is why the relationship becomes suffocatingly unpredictable. The empath begins to feel confused. wondering what they did wrong. They blame themselves. They try to love more, understand more, and be more patient, believing that if they are gentle enough, the other person will eventually stay. But the harsh truth is this: that instability is not born from the empath doing something wrong, nor does it come from love not being strong enough. No amount of love in this world can fill the emptiness left by someone who refuses to face themselves. The narcissist struggles to maintain intimacy, not necessarily because they are completely incapable of love, but because intimacy forces them to do the very thing they fear most in this world, to face themselves. And as long as they continue running from that mirror, the person standing beside them, no matter how deeply loving, will remain only a witness to an inner battle they never allow themselves to win. Because for the narcissist, victory sometimes feels like surrender, surrendering to the true self they have spent their entire life denying. Part 3. The push-pull cycle and the invisible trap that imprisons the empath. The pain in a relationship with someone who has narcissistic traits is never simple pain. It does not hurt like a clear, clean cut. It hurts because in the same person, we see both beauty and cruelty. There are days when they make the empath feel like they are the whole world, the only one chosen, heard and understood to the very bottom of the soul. Then, without warning, they become cold. The person who was once lifted so high suddenly feels abandoned, begins to question their own worth, and is treated as if they had never mattered at all. And it is precisely that uncertainty, that unpredictable rhythm of warmth and coldness, that is the most dangerous part. Because it does not push the empath away, it binds them even closer. The empath does not only remember the person standing before them, they remember another version, the beautiful version that appeared in the beginning. They remember the feeling of being listened to. They remember the gentle words. They remember moments that felt so real they seemed impossible to fake. And every time the other person grows cold or turns away, the empath desperately tries to bring the relationship back to that golden beginning. They begin to turn inward and question themselves. Was I not patient enough? Did I accidentally hurt them? If I understood them just a little more, would everything be different? Those questions become the chains around their feet. They keep the empath trying, and then trying even harder. They create reasons to justify every behavior from the other person. They excuse the coldness. They patiently wait for a change that never comes. They firmly believe that behind all those wounds, there is still a kind person, someone who simply has not been loved in the right way. But here is the bitter truth very few people dare to face. While the empath drains themselves trying to preserve the relationship, the person with narcissistic traits quietly benefits from that very effort. They can leave whenever they feel suffocated, then return the moment they need comfort. They can cause pain, yet still be forgiven and understood. They can avoid responsibility, while the person who stays tirelessly searches for reasons to sympathize on their behalf. And this is the most toxic core of the entire loop. The more the empath tries to understand, the less the other person has to understand themselves. The more the empath works to heal, the less the other person has to take responsibility for the wounds they have caused. Compassion, which is the empath's most beautiful gift, can become a shield that helps the narcissist escape themselves. In the spirit of Carl Jung, whatever shadow a person refuses to face, they often unconsciously force someone else to carry. But the deepest tragedy does not only lie in the narcissist, it also lies within the empath. Because at some point, they no longer love the person as that person truly is. They love a possibility. They love the shadow of a better version they once glimpsed, then projected onto the other person, painting it until it becomes even more vivid than the real person standing before them. They no longer love the other person in the present. They love who that person might become in the future. And this is where hope turns into a prison. Because hope, when placed in the wrong place, is no longer a guiding light. It becomes a golden cage, beautiful, soft, and comforting, but still a cage. It imprisons the empath inside an imagined future and prevents them from seeing the truth unfolding right in front of their eyes. They wait for a version that perhaps never truly existed and lose themselves while waiting. Part 4. Empaths only become truly free when they stop playing the savior. The turning point in this story almost never comes from the narcissist. It does not happen on the day they suddenly awaken, change, and become the person you have always hoped they would be. That day usually never comes. The true turning point happens somewhere completely different, inside the empath. It is the moment they stop staring at the other person and, for the first time, dare to turn the lens back toward themselves. It is the moment they recognize the role they have been silently playing for so long in this painful drama. Empaths need to remember one truth deeply. Understanding is a gift, but it must never become a reason to endure suffering. Compassion is one of the most beautiful things a human being can offer. But when that compassion begins to erode your peace, eat away at your dignity, and take away your sense of safety inside the home of your own soul, then it has been placed in the wrong place. Love that makes you lose yourself is no longer love. It is self-abandonment. And here is the harshest truth. No one can heal on behalf of someone who refuses to face themselves. The empath can create a safe space, but they cannot force anyone to grow. They can listen all the way to the end, but they cannot carry the responsibility that belongs to someone else. They can love with their whole heart, but no love and no patience is strong enough to turn a broken relationship into a whole one when only one person is willing to try. And then, one day, the empath understands. They begin to call their energy back to themselves, not to take revenge, not to make the other person regret it, not to prove anything at all, simply because they can no longer keep draining their life force to sustain a system that is slowly killing them from within. And then silence appears. But understand this correctly. This silence is not a psychological move. It is not a trap set to lure the other person back. It is the sigh of a soul that has grown too tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of waiting. Tired of hoping for something that perhaps never truly existed. It is the moment the empath no longer needs the other person to acknowledge their pain in order for that pain to be real. They no longer wait for an apology before allowing themselves to begin healing. They no longer see the narcissist's return as the only proof that they are worthy of love. And when all of that is finally released, a new question quietly begins to rise. The empath no longer asks, "Why won't they let me go?" Instead, they begin to ask, "Why did I allow my own freedom to depend on whether or not they let go?" And in the very moment that question arises, something miraculous happens. Inner power begins to flow back. In the spirit of Jung, we cannot change anything until we dare to accept it. Condemnation does not liberate a person. It only binds them. And the empath finally understands. They do not need to hate the other person in order to walk away. They do not need to turn the other person into a villain before giving themselves permission to leave that relationship. They only need enough awareness to stop trading their whole self for a relationship that lacks the three most essential things: stability, responsibility, and respect. Because stepping out of the cage has never meant giving up on love. It is the moment they finally choose to love themselves. And before we close this video, remember one important thing. Narcissists struggle to let go of empaths not simply because of love. They struggle to let go because the empath once gave them the feeling of being seen, being steadied, and being touched. In the true human part, they often hide behind the mask. But when they do not have enough courage to face the truth within themselves, they will both need that understanding and resist it every time they feel they are losing control. As for the empath, if they are not awakened, they can easily mistake intense attachment for deep love. They may believe they are the only one who truly understands the other person, the only one who can heal them, the only one who can make them change. But a healthy relationship cannot be built on one-sided sacrifice. It cannot survive when one person keeps giving, while the other keeps avoiding responsibility. The truth is this: being needed is not the same as being loved. Being impossible to forget does not mean being valued. And the fact that someone returns again and again does not prove that they want to build a lasting relationship. Sometimes, they return not because they have changed, but because they miss the feeling of being supported by you, forgiven by you, and reflected back as a better version of themselves through you. The empath's freedom begins when they stop being a shelter for someone else's chaos, when they stop trying to prove their worth by saving someone who refuses to save themselves, when they understand that real love should never make them lose their peace, their dignity, or their connection to who they truly are. Letting go, in this case, is not failure. It is an act of awakening. It is the moment the empath no longer lives to reflect the narcissist's pain, but begins to return to and protect their own life. If this video helped you understand more clearly the connection between the narcissist and the empath, please hit the like button to help spread this message to others who may also need to awaken. And if you want to continue exploring the deeper hidden corners of psychology, healing, and the journey back to yourself, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. Remember, you were not born to become the place where others unload their darkness. You were born to live in the light, in peace, and in a love that does not require you to lose yourself.